Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the country or in the world, whether you're watching this live or recorded. It's much better live. You should always join us live. Then you get to say hi to us on the chat and all those kind of things as well. Um, Big set of slides today. And not only that, I have actually also created a notebook with some research in it using Notebook LM. I don't endorse any particular AI, use the one that works. Personally, I've got a Claude subscription. I use ChatGPT for some things. It's not so good as Claude, and also Copilot and a few other things as well. So yeah, it's good. A couple of people are saying it's foggy or not foggy, depending on where they are in the country. And actually, we've just had a severe weather warning to say we're going to have some bad thunderstorms today. So tornadoes and stuff like that. It gets a little bit exciting. Why not? Eh? Why not? So hi to my friends in the Netherlands, Portugal, Zagreb, Germany, Barcelona, Patrick in France, and Einstein both in France as well. And also Raphael from wonderful Sao Paulo as well. Lots and lots of our friends over in Brazil. It's great stuff. Apparently, it's raining in Barcelona, but it's been a full day of Mobile World Congress. Well, there you go. I know that next week, one of my colleagues, Stephen Ball, is off to Berlin as well. I think Exasol are having a conference there, and that's all. Poor old Gazzy stuck in a cold Leeds, UK. Sorry about that, Gazzy. You know how it is. What can I say? I can't fix these things. Hey, and Yilmaz is here as well. Hi, Yilmaz, a very, very good developer. One of the pioneers of AI, by the way, long before it became popular. Apparently, they plowed snow this morning in New Hampshire. I did hear that the time that we're putting this out, there's something like 20 inches of snow on the eastern part of the United States. It's been warm here. In fact, I actually have shorts on. I can do this. I actually have shorts on. Oh dear, my camera is now complaining about the shininess of me. It's not quite been sunny enough to get a suntan too much at the moment. But yeah, it's shorts weather here now. We've got to that point, and it's sunny in Southern California. Of course, it is. I have to say, California is one of the few places I'd probably move to if I could just sell my kidneys so that I could get enough money to buy a property there. It's extremely expensive. Okay, but lovely, lovely. I mean, picking fruit from trees. You can do that in Texas as well, but it's a different. Our weather here is tropical subhumid, is how they describe it, and that just basically means hot and sweaty in the summer and tornadoes twice a year as well. So there you go. Okay, ciao to my friends in Italy as well. We've got a busy session now. Today's webinar, I've done one webinar already on security with Scanner, the wonderful Valerie Kim from Scanner, who's an expert. I also spoke to some guys last week, at the end of last week. Unfortunately, I've forgotten their company name. It's kind of an odd name, formerly or something like that. Anyway, we'll publicize it. One of them actually is involved with the European Parliament to do with the the Cyber Resilience Act. Very interesting conversation I had with them, and I'm hoping to have them back another time where we will talk about it. They're a funny couple of guys because they're both good friends. They both live in Malta as well. Not together, separate, but they both live in Malta, which is how they became friends. One of them is a very laid-back, kind of quiet Englishman. The other guy, I think I did mention to him before, he's quite a personality, shall we say. He's an American guy, and he's kind of like in your face, kind of. I like him, but well, he's even more loud than me, and that takes some doing. But very interesting conversation they had, and we're looking to maybe do a webinar together. They do have some security related products as well. The English guy, out of the two of them, a British guy, is a Delphi developer as well. So I'm hoping we couldn't quite get it together in time for this webinar, but I'm hoping to have another one with them. Also coming up next week, next Friday, I believe. Let me just check my calendar before I make some assumptions. Actually, no, I'm completely wrong. Just as well, I check. Next, not next week, but the week after, the 19th, we have the 13.1 sneak peek webinar. And before that, on the Tuesday of that week, we also have a webinar with GDK where they're talking about web stencils and the AI. They have got a new product. I don't know whether you remember that before, a thing called Codalex that they had before, but they now have built that into a web stencils project with AI behind it. It's absolutely fascinating. I think Marco G is going to come and talk to me about it, but that will be that week as well. So on the 17th, we've got a webinar with Marco G of GDK. And on the 19th, we've got the RAD Studio 13.1 or Delphi 13.1 or C++ Builder 13.1, depending on which way you lean, sneak peek. And that we both of those are at 10 a.m. So 2 hours earlier than today. I tried to pick this time for my webinars. And as Patrick says, Codalex AI, yes, that is their new product. And in fact, their website is codalex.ai, but we'll talk about that when we see them. And as Patrick says, they've got some great open source projects too. Yes, I really like, I've got several things happening. Now, in March, we've got quite a few webinars related to products. In April, my plan is, and we're still finalizing this, to have a number of different component vendors come and show some of their new stuff. One of them will be N Software, who has a new set of MCP components, AI related stuff, very, very interesting. Dev Express, we're going to go through them. Boyan Mitov from Mitov Software is going to be joining me as well for a webinar then. I'm also going to be appearing on some podcasts as well for Brazil. So if you're Brazilian and you like listening to podcasts, I'm going to be there. It's going to be in English, I'm afraid, but I believe they'll probably translate it into Portuguese at some point. And we've got a load of stuff. April's going to be very busy with things going on. There is no Delphi Summit this year. I'll put Marco G on the spot when I see him about whether there will be one next year, but he has already said they intend to do one next year. There was nothing wrong with it. It's just that they've got so many things going on that it's actually a big commitment for their company to do the Delphi Summit. We did look at maybe trying to set it up ourselves and see things like that, and actually we found it's so much work, it probably wasn't an ideal thing. So no Delphi Summit this year, but lots of events, and we've got a nice big event calendar coming up to tell you all about that. Anyway, you're all here for this webinar. Let me get my slides up. So I'm going to share my screen when it shares, and we're going to share screen 2, which is this one. For some reason it doesn't show screen. Oh, yes, it does show screen 3. It's just hidden. So this is my screen, and I'm going to get my slides to come up and rearrange PowerPoint, because it's got this horrible little bug where once you have PowerPoint working, you can't actually see what's going on, which is very annoying. Okay, I'm going to turn my camera off because it's probably going to be in the way. And actually, we've got someone saying something very big there. Great topic, America. The upcoming wave of security laws in the US and Europe will definitely reshape how companies build and manage software. Absolutely, Gabriel. And yeah, once we get through the slides, I think everybody will agree. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. What the new security regulations this year? As I was saying earlier on, this webinar is a little bit of a kind of combination thing. Because there isn't a kind of nebulous term for and all the other stuff that's related to security and compliance. I think it's probably the best term I can come up with, and there's a lot of it. And this year, really, the best way of talking about it for this webinar is security and other things you would rather forget about, and why Texas, Utah, and Louisiana are now your problem. Doesn't matter where you are, what country you're in, you're going to be in trouble, basically. And I don't want to spread doom and gloom around, but this year is a bit of a bear when it comes to all this compliance and all these regulations. And before we go any further, I just want to make it absolutely clear. I've done my best due diligence. Okay, I've done what I can in terms of making sure that the information that I've got is up to date. I am going to share my research with you. I used Notebook LM for some of the information to gather it together. It's very efficient at doing that. I'm not endorsing any one particular AI product, although what I can say is that Notebook LM is very good for research. I personally use Claude as well for other things, and Claude is very effective for coding, I found, for Delphi, for example. But nevertheless, I could have made some mistakes. I could have been completely wrong. I could have missed something vital. I could even be telling you something that's complete nonsense, because there's always a disclaimer that says AI can get things wrong. Well, so can Ian's as well. So do your own research and use your own judgment. And if you're not sure at all, or you're going to make a big decision, then seek some professional advice just to make sure you're on the safe side. And 2026, I did say this at the end of last year, but I'll say it again. It's an epic year for software development. There's a whole bunch of things happening, not just in terms of security, because although security is actually quite a significant proportion of that, but also there's an awful lot of stuff going on in terms of AI. I said last year that I think this year will be the year for AI really taking off and becoming something. What will happen is the little ones that are not going to make it are going to be shook out and shaken out this year, and they'll fall by the wayside. I think that's going to happen. And if you look at that headline there, and that's from Anthropic's blog, actually, they've raised $30 billion in Series G funding at $380 billion of post-money valuation. If someone is giving them 30 billion, someone somewhere wants to make some of that money back as a profit, and I think this is one of the things that we mustn't forget this year. And I would say that although it's got nothing to do with security, in some ways it actually has, because your choice of where you head in terms of what you're doing with AI has got as much to do with security as any of the other things we're going to talk about. I am going to talk about proper topics that is going to be really playing into your security choices as well. So I think it's just worth bearing in mind. Now I have an app that's going away and crashing in the background. Oh, then we'll forget about it. So yes, your choice of AIs is really, it's as much a security decision as anything else. So just bear that in mind. If you pick, I don't know about you, but I use AI note takers for meetings. I have an awful lot of meetings, dozens per week. I have a lot of emails. Every email, if you email me, you get an email back from me that is typed by me. It is not AI doing that. It's not AI handling it. I don't get it to triage my emails. I answer those emails. And the reason I do that is it's not very efficient, okay? But I think it's important that when you are contacting Embarcadero or IDEA in general, that you feel like you're talking to human beings. I don't want us to be a faceless monolith where everything is automated. Whenever recently changed my insurance, for example, um, for my company, uh, and we were I needed to get through to someone to say, "Hey, I see you've got this term in here. Um, you know, what does this mean? Because I don't understand it." And I googled it and I couldn't find any answers to it, and I couldn't get through to a human being. And it was all automated voice stuff, which I absolutely understand, because that's how they can, offer insurance at a cheap rate. But sometimes you don't want to press button 7, then press button 4, and press button 6, and then find that that selection of things you've gone through is the wrong choice. To get the answer. I think that sometimes you need a direct answer from a human being, and I've tried very hard as Embarcadero's developer advocate to make sure that you feel you're dealing with humans. If you've got a complaint about the software or a compliment, I mean, we like you to tell us what's good as well. But if you are dealing with someone that, at Embarcadero, I want you to know that you're dealing with a human being. And it's your software. It's a very personal thing, writing software. Sitting there and typing out code is a very, very one-to-one experience in many cases. And when something's wrong, you take it personally, and I absolutely, I get that. So when you email me, that's me answering, okay, not AI. Having said that, like I say, the note-taking software and all that kind of stuff, we do make sure that it is as efficient as possible, shall we say? And so I will use note-taking software and meeting software and things like that. But that's what I think is filtering out this year in 2026. AI is people are getting to the point where they're trusting it. It's very possible to code with AI help, but also that brings in some new security challenges as well. If you For example, we have a pull request at the moment where I help manage some of the stuff to do with Syn Edit, SYN Edit. And we have someone who's done some PR requests and they are using AI, and they've overwhelmed us with the amount of PRs that they've pushed in. The AI has managed to help them generate an awful lot of stuff. And there are some unit tests and things like that as well. But unfortunately, we've got to review it, and we cannot do that in an automated way and put our hands on our heart and say it's safe. So, that does mean that we have to, do as much automation as we can, but we've got to go through and review that. So, 2026 is yes, it's helping people generate more software, but in order to be secure, you've also actually got to be on top of it as well. So, I think it's an epic year. I think it's an interesting time, and this year is bringing with it something really horrific, and that is this part of that image. And that is a great big spreadsheet of all the laws and rules and regulations that are coming into force this year. And this spreadsheet is available on a repository that I'll be putting on later. You'll be able to download this and also be able to download all my research as well, because I want you to understand that when I'm showing you these slides, I'm not just making it up. And likewise, I don't want you to feel like I'm creating fear for the sake of fear or uncertainty or something like that, and go, I see, you should subscribe to X or Y so that you're safe. No, I don't want us to sell our software based on frightening you. But at the same time, I want you to understand that this is not a joke. This year is a big deal for security, and you need to take it seriously if you're not already. I promise you, it's not great. And let's just zoom in on the bits that are coming up. So here's a snapshot of that. And to make it easier, what I did was I've actually highlighted all the things that are software related rather than banking or government body related. So there are some things like NIS2 directive, for example, which it does have some bearing on what you're doing. But at that particular stage, it isn't highlighted, so it's the row number 4 there. It actually really applied to kind of big entities like banks and government, sub entities like, I don't know, Department of Transport or something like that. I don't know, those kind of quangos as they used to be called. And it was more about that. But as time goes on, later on in the list, you'll see that it actually applies to us as well. And so on line 8, for example, I've highlighted the fact that that's when member states need to actually start implementing some things into what they call in scope entities. Aren't politicians great? They come up with all this. I get it. They need to narrow the language down to be unambiguous. But I think in scope entity doesn't really make it understandable for humans like me and you as to what they mean exactly by that. What's an in-scope entity? Well, they do explain it, but it's buried in so much text that it's actually not that easy to understand. Really, what it means is if you are dealing with data and you're sending it in mass quantities of data around in the cloud, for example, then there are certain countries you cannot send over a certain amount to. And you can take an easy guess at what those countries would be. Right now, given the political climate, one of those countries is Iran, Russia as well, and a few other countries. That's if you're in the United States. If you're in Europe, there are also some restrictions about that as well. But even sharing between the European Union and the United States is also covered by some of these directives. So there's an awful lot of laws. And like I say, I have got all of this research listed out and in a notebook and a few other things as well, which I'll share in a moment. The notebook looks like this. If you've never used Notebook LM before, then you're in for a surprise. It does a very good job of gathering together all the crud that there is, and there's a lot of it about stuff to do with software security and compliance. And I'll give you the link at the end so that you can get to this directly and have a look at it yourself. And also some slides and a repository with things on. So let's say what's the deal this year then? What is the thing that's happening? Well, really in 2026, the main change is that the landscape changes from one of compliance, and I'm just going to shut this particular person up because someone keeps sending messages. Make them go quiet for a second by muting their chat. There you go. Good. The compliance changes really from kind of like, oh, we'll catch you if you mess up, really goes to now to a situation where you actually have to comply, and if not, some bad stuff really happens. But also the rules are putting the screws down on some of the people like the app stores and providers like Amazon, DigitalOcean and people like that, and making them part of the problem, making the problem apply to them as well. There used to be a thing called common carrier where you could get away with saying, well, Facebook, you use this law all the time. It's not our fault if there's a neo-Nazi clan on there or something like that. We're just providing the mechanism for people to interact. And it's not our fault if a bunch of neo-Nazis who are mostly frowned on around the world are using that platform. Actually, lots of the rules came about because of that kind of behavior, but also when people would say things like, well, it's not our fault that the data was stolen, and all this personal information was taken. It's not our fault. We're just providing a repository. It's the fault of the application provider. The application provider would say, well, actually, it's the fault of Amazon or whoever. Actually, what a lot of these laws are doing are now making it so it's everybody's problem, which is actually, in a way, a good thing. The other key thing there as well is understanding what's going into your software so that you cannot just blindly use various pieces of software and get away with it and say, nah, I'm sure it's all right. It's used by enough people. No, you can't do that anymore. Now you've actually got to have things like software composition analysis, and SBOM, so software bill of materials, which we talked about in the webinar with Valerie, but I'll talk about a bit more in a moment and explain exactly how that applies. And the other big thing is digital identity and age verification. And this is a big topic. And this is definitely going to affect you. And unfortunately, this rule is you would think that it would only apply to you if, for example, you're going to have an application like a game, because we're all used to having games and videos, movies, having a certificate, like an age certificate, and saying, oh, it's an 18 as it used to be, or an X certificate, or hey, this movie or this game is for adults only. In fact, when I'm broadcasting, you'll probably seen that I have a video games console behind me. I have Mortal Kombat 2, and during the broadcast, because we're going out to YouTube, I turn it off of Mortal Kombat. And the reason is that Mortal Kombat 3 actually received an age rating, and that affects YouTube. So if I show the Mortal Kombat, I can get in trouble, because in theory, this presentation, although we do tick the box that says it's not for children, I mean, the topic's not really going to interest a kid, is it? But it might. At the same time, YouTube is a public forum, and if I'm showing someone having his head pulled off in Mortal Kombat, which is funny at the time when you're playing the game, but not so cool if it's an infant or a child who can see that image and be sad about it. So I actually turn it on to something a bit less innocuous. I think at the moment I've got Root Beer Tapper, which is a children's game. Anyway, it's rated like a child's game, but digital identity and age verification is going to affect you, because these are laws that are relevant in the United States, but they're also applying in the EU. And if you have an app, nowadays you cannot really get away with saying, well, I only sell my app in the United Kingdom, or I only sell my app in France, or I only sell my app in Germany, or I only sell my app in Chile. Doesn't matter, because nowadays with the internet, we're almost basically one world, and so you do have to care about these things, because sooner or later you're going to get up. And a lot of these things you'd say, well, I'm not going to ever be under their jurisdiction because I live in Australia, and EU law can't get me. No, that's unfortunately not how it works. And the governance and data sovereignty is the same thing. So you can't just send around data, and you can't just use AI without taking into account the rules that apply to your user. So it's a bit of a nightmare, really. So let's talk about some of these laws, the specifics of some of these laws, and why it is actually a fact. And the biggest one, I'm sad to say, as a Texan, because I do live in Frisco in Texas, which is northern part of Dallas. Texas was the first to come out with an age law, and in fact, it's actually paused at the moment. SB 2420 is paused. Someone's challenging it in court, and this is not uncommon in the United States. Now, I'm going to guess most of you are not running pornography websites. But actually, the law does apply to these. Well, to be honest, adult entertainment material, shall we call it, has always really been subject to some kind of verification, but actually it was always very lax. It used to get away with people saying, are you old enough to watch this? And everyone clicks, yes, of course I am. And I no disrespect, but if I was a 15-year-old boy, I'm pretty certain I would click, yes, I'm older. Now, are you breaking the law by ticking the box that says you're over 18? Probably. Is anybody going to ever sue you? No, probably not. But what they are going to do is sue the websites. And I thought something very interesting there was in that very first paragraph, where it says, websites where more than 1/3 of content is sexual material harmful to minors. More than 1/3 of content. Now, why is that a little bit of a gotcha? Well, the reason is, if you've got a game and the game includes people that are, shall we say, scantily dressed, but it could be, that that's not the point of the game, or it's not the point of the website. You're actually doing something else in that website. I don't know, it's a shoot 'em up game or something like that, whatever the term would be. But if it happens that they judge that a third of what you're showing is sexual material, and they do define what sexual material is, then you can be in trouble. So even though you're not actually a pornography website, i.e., an out and out, just selling pornography and explicit material, the you can still be caught out by the fact that whatever your game is, or whatever your website is, contains information that could be classified as sexual material, and it only has to be one third of it. So that's actually quite a low bar, I think, for being running foul of these kind of things. So the App Store law, which is the one that really kicked it all off, Texas brought this out first, and then some other states copied them as well. And I'm going to tell you what the different states are. But the App Store law basically said that you are required to use, quote, commercially reasonable methods to verify users' ages and obtain parental consent for minors to download apps. This is not optional. You cannot, and at the moment it is because the law's paused, but at any moment now, the law could be unblocked, and that could happen all the time. And there'll be a lot of pressure in Texas to unblock it. I can tell you that now. Once it's unblocked, you will have to identify the age of your user. I'm going to tell you how you do that in a moment, but you need to understand what the age of the users are. And there are actually 3 different ranges for ages. And the law that's in there and the research that I've put together will tell you what happens depending on what category those people fall under. And obtaining parental consent for the minors to download apps. So you can't allow them to download your app without the parental consent. That is different from whether the materials in that app are age appropriate. So they can't, and I think the reasoning behind this is probably for things like loot boxes, which my research that I dug up actually specifically mentions that, and some of the laws talk about loot boxes. Like you've got a game like, I don't know, I don't want to call out a particular game name, but one of these games where you can purchase, cooler equipment like a better gun, or a different, costume for your character, your avatar or whatever you want to call it. And it's generally referred to as a loot box, and the LOOT, not the musical instrument. And this law specifically talks about that. So it's a problem. Now, right now, it's stopped by a federal judge because, welcome to democracy in the United States. And it will filter its way through. And eventually, given enough time, it probably will get reenacted again. The law has been passed by the Texas Congress, which means, you are, if it's unstopped by the Supreme Court, then it's enacted immediately. There's no further steps. So just be aware of that. And the categories, it says that children are under the age of 13. Okay, and younger teenagers it categorizes as 13 to 15, which I think is probably reasonable. Tweens, we used to call them back in the day, but that's a younger teenager. So they're a teenager. They're 13 and up to 15, not 16. Older teenager is 16 to 17, and then after 17, they're categorized as adults. At least for the purposes of this law. Funnily enough, many other laws in Texas do not count you as an adult until you're 21 years old. So odd categorization, but welcome to the law. It's always bizarre. And the concern is, of course, that, the critics say, well, that's great, but in order to do this, the kids have got to, submit government IDs, and even the adults do, to prove they're adults. Look, I'm a grown up, here's my ID. And of course, someone somewhere has got to get that information and process it. And that's when you start to have things like breaches of got, oh, the full ID. In the United States, your driving license is used for all sorts of things. Loan verification, all sorts of things. So once someone can get your details off of that ID, it's a big deal. So yeah, it's not great. And yes, you will have to comply to it. It's not valid at the moment, but it's coming. And the next one to be enacted is in 2 months' time, as the time that we're recording this, and that's May the 7th. And that is Utah App Store, exactly the same idea as the Texas law. It's a Senate bill, the App Store Accountability Act, exactly the same thing. And the idea is to make sure that teenagers, children, or whatever you want to call them, can only get to information on materials that are relevant to their age group. And I have to say, in some ways, you can't really argue against it. It's trying to catch up with the modernity of what's going on. The internet kind of ballooned before the laws could catch up. Now the laws are catching up with the fact that perhaps you don't want, a 9-year-old child playing a game where they are Nazis exterminating someone, for example. That would be distasteful at the very least, and offensive or worse. Likewise, if the game allowed you to view people that are possibly fake, and there are a lot of apps at the moment that are AI apps that allow you to generate quite realistic adult content. You don't really, I don't know about you, but I don't believe that a child should be exposed to that kind of stuff on an app. And now it was always the case that they couldn't go and rent it from a DVD video rental place, because an honest store owner would go, you can't have that. Likewise, they can't go and buy alcohol because we prevent children from having alcohol. And again, it's the store owner who is responsible. Excuse me. They are the guardians, and they look at the person, and if they believe that they're underage, they ask them for proof that they're not. All that's happening here is that the law is kind of catching up with how the internet has evolved. So obligations for the developer, which is really what you care about. Developers must assign age ratings to apps and notify platforms of, quote, significant changes to app content. Oh, excuse me. No. And Utah, interestingly enough, allow private individuals to sue the app makers for violations. Now, in the United States, that could be a thing called a class action, which is a very bad thing indeed. If you get enough people clubbed together in a class action lawsuit, you could be talking about millions and millions. I'll tell you about the fines in a moment, but they are unpleasant at the very least. And there's some legal challenges, of course there is, because, in a democracy, there should be a pro and a con for these things. And one side is arguing that it's an invasion of privacy, and also that it violates the First Amendment, which is the right to free speech, which I understand. But, I think ultimately, who knows whether it's going to work or not. But it's a law you have to take care of. And if that wasn't enough, Louisiana is it's full of really good southern crawfish food and things like that as well, and yet another law that you are going to have to apply to. Although it says May the 7th in the top corner there, that's incorrect. I made a mistake on my slides. It's actually July the 1st, and it's exactly the same thing as the other two. Basically, you've got to verify what age someone is, and whether or not they are allowed to view the content, and whether they can download the apps. What's interesting about this is the bottom line here, okay, which is unlike some other states, the Louisiana law as passed has been described as not providing a specific safe harbor for developers who rely on App Store age data. So if the App Store makes a mistake and the App Store provides a API that allows you to verify the age of the person using it, and then it turns out that actually that person, that user is not the age that they told the App Store, you as a developer are still on the hook. Great. Now, I don't know whether that in practice would happen. It probably won't. But one thing that you should notice as well is the violation, the price of the violations is pretty steep as well. So you're looking at several $1,000s. And whilst we're talking about that particular kind of thing, let's also talk about federal information processing standards, because in order to gather all this stuff together, you're going to have to handle some data. Now, the Federal Information Processing Standards has got really nothing to do with app stores. We're going to come back to that in a minute. But what it does do is mandate how you handle data and how you use cryptography. And it actually, for the first time ever, basically tells you what type of cryptography you should have. And it applies to things like healthcare and finance sectors and all those kind of things as well. And several people saying, well, I'm not sure AI will be a solution. No, exactly. And basically what these laws are doing is putting the monkey on your shoulder as developers. I mean, I don't know what to say, because in some ways, yeah, okay, it should do that. But in some ways, no, it shouldn't. Why is it our fault if someone lies to us and tells us they're a child or not a child, and we're in trouble? I get it, you wouldn't leave a gun in the street and expect, to get away with, avoid prosecution if someone picks it up and uses that gun to do something stupid. If they accidentally use the gun and kill someone. And it's the same thing if you are reckless about how you handle people's data and process the data, and including things like their age and their ID, then you've got to expect to be in trouble. Now, FIPS is specifically about federal processing standards, and it's to do with things like healthcare, federal and finance sectors. So if you're not in those sectors, the FIPS might not actually apply to you. It's really for banking, healthcare information. But what I do know is that a lot of Delphi people out there, and actually just as many C++ people, but probably more Delphi people, do work in the healthcare sector. And certainly things like human resources as well. And many of you also deal with federal government, either directly or inadvertently. And FIPS is really, it's got a whole bunch of information about that in that connection. Why does it matter? Well, it's mandatory for vendors who are selling technology to US federal agencies, and it's considered a benchmark for data security in regulated industries. What is a regulated industry? Pharmacy, healthcare, certain types of human resources. It's something important to pay attention to. Again, the researchers goes into a lot more details, and these slides are downloadable as well. Everything you see is going to be there. So when you have FIPS and the EU, it's going to be a nightmare. Yes, exactly. Good news is, and it's kind of a plug for Interbase, but if you're using Interbase, the good news is, as long as you turn on this little checkbox that says turn on FIPS compliance, if you do that, then your database is FIPS compliant automatically. So you don't need to worry too much about that. Obviously, you can't be reckless and then just put that on a memory stick and expect everybody to be happy about it, or put it in a publicly accessible S3 bucket on Amazon. But if you're using FIPS, then there are things like encryption at rest, column encryption, row encryption, all the rest of it. Interbase has got every type of protection you'd ever want. I get it. I know, you might say, well, I want to use MySQL, I want to use that. Look, for many of you out there watching this, Interbase is free for you to develop with, and certainly Interbase to go light and all the rest of it. You've got licenses for these already, depending on the type of RAD Studio license you're using, or Delphi license, or C++ Builder license, and it works on all sorts of platforms as well. So, expect me to be positive about Interbase because it's an Embarcadero product, but at the same time, You know, look at what it can do. All these things, 50, Interbase 15 strengthened the encryption to rock solid encryption, and TLS and all the rest of it as well. This plays into another rule that's coming to relevance this year. Woo-hoo! On September the 11th. I think it's interesting. I'm sure, I don't know whether this was deliberate, but that's actually 9/11, which is obviously the anniversary of the Twin Towers when, you know, all hell broke loose, really. I remember that day very, very clearly, watching it live on the web, actually, in the UK. I was living in the UK still at that point. And I wonder if that's deliberate. They're doing it on September 11th. But the EU Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA, it came into force on December the 10th, 2024, but it will become mandatory by December the 11th. But also there are reporting obligations, and it says manufacturers, but I'll explain what that means in a moment. For manufacturers regarding exploited vulnerabilities and incidents from September the 11th. So, what does it mean by manufacturers? Well, it's talking a little bit about hardware, okay, but also about anybody that considers to be a manufacturer. Now, the Cyber Resilience Act explains at length what it means by manufacturer, and you may be one of those people, okay? And you know, just you should probably research into it and check that you are not affected and you're not considered a manufacturer according to this. Get some advice. As I said before, I'm not a lawyer. I could have made lots of mistakes here. I'm not an expert on this, but I did do some very, very thorough research on this for a couple of weeks before I did this webinar. And I knew a lot of it already anyway. I was one of the original signatories for the Data Protection Act back in the 80s when I lived in England. So I've seen this kind of stuff before. Excuse me. But notice there, September the 11th, 9/11, reporting obligations for manufacturers regarding security incidents and exploited vulnerabilities begin. So if you are exploited, and for example, Notepad++, when they got exploited recently, you will be required by law to notify certain people. And the law, the act actually explains what it is. They've got like a kind of idiot-proof guide, you know, I don't know, CRA for dummies, I suppose you'd call it, or something like that. But I call it a simplified explanation of where and how to report these things. Also, the key important thing there as well is this other section down at the bottom there, where it says, by December the 11th, your full application of the law comes into effect. And that requires CE marking for compliance hardware and SBOM, so software bill of materials. So this is why when they use the term manufacturers, it's a bit confusing, because they make it quite clear here by that wording that they consider software to be manufactured. And they're not talking about someone who actually assembles bits of hardware, but actually software is manufactured. And they do go, like I say, in the rule, they go into explain what they mean by that. But your software bill of materials will be mandatory by 11th of December. Also, another key thing to notice here as well is where it says the hardware will require CE marking. If you are one of our many people out there who are selling hardware with it, for example, I know a lot of you have factory equipment that you drive with Delphi, and medical equipment. I know of at least one C++ place that does medical equipment, scanning equipment, and I know several time and attendance manufacturers who have time recorders. And I know point of sales people and signs, electronic signs, and even loudspeaker equipment and things like that in airports, because that's all driven by Delphi as well. All of those pieces of equipment will require CE marking. Okay. And if you don't have the CE marking, so let's say you're having it manufactured in China, And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very sensible thing to do from a financial point of view. Sometimes that means that they will not have CE approval for the hardware. You will need that from 11th of December. And if you're selling any hardware at all, to go with your software, and your point of sale terminal comes over and you bought it in bulk and it doesn't have the CE mark on it, no more selling anywhere in Europe. That's a fact. Read the rules, like I say, don't rely on me. I could be completely wrong, but it's a problem. Coming close on the heels of the other ones that are asking for ages, California enters the ring in January next year. And it's got some milestones before then, but again, it's exactly the same thing as Utah and Texas and Louisiana. So there's 4 states out of the 50, and I suspect at some point most of the others will follow suit as well. Um, I'm guessing we'll probably get up to about 30 to 40 states by the time we're done. They are also requiring digital age assurance. Now, what's interesting about this is you could argue that some of the states that have already mandated this digital age thing are leaning one way politically, fairly conservative viewpoint. California is famously quite liberal, and yet they are also requiring a digital age assurance. So you can't really say, well, it's just that'll get repealed at some point. No, I think the consensus of opinion here is that most of these states are catching up with the fact that the internet has grown and outgrown, um, the law, and the law is trying to catch up with this. Again, notice the scope there on the second line applies to all OS providers, operating system providers, mobile, desktop, and handhelds. So not just the app stores, but also iOS, Android, Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. And yes, Linux is actually required to understand whether the person is of a particular age or not. And then they signal that to the app stores. So if you're buying something on Microsoft Store, for example, it needs to know how old you are before you can install it on your PC. Same thing with the Mac App Store. If you're running a Mac and you've got a Mac OS, which is a great operating system as well as Windows being great as well, you go to install a Mac app, it needs to understand how old you are before you can do that. So it's not just mobile apps, it is desktop apps as well. One key thing there as well is what happens when it comes to how much you have to pay. Now, there's a little bit of a clever little bit of wording here, which I will explain to you, okay? And that is where it says $2,500 per negligent violation or $7,500 per intentional violation. And actually, weirdly enough, based on what I saw, those are 2 different things. So negligent violation appears to mean, and again, check this, it appears to mean that, yes, and as Patrick points out, it'll impact web apps too. Yes, it will. There's no hiding place. If you write an app, you're affected. So the negligent violation bit appears to mean per child. So if you have a child sign up and you found you didn't check or whatever, and or your checking wasn't robust enough, and then you can get fined $2,500 per child. However, the wording appears to say the intentional violation is per incident. Now, if I understand that correctly, and I may not, it may mean that every time that child logs in, it's $7,500, so $7,500 every time they log in. So if they log in 100 times, you're looking at a lot of money there. I mean, as if 7,500 is not already a lot of money. You start racking it up, you start looking at 75 thousand dollars very quickly, and then you could really very quickly get to millions. And the funny thing was, most of you will know that I'm a big fan of HBO's Silicon Valley, and it reminded me of this scene in HBO, which is where they, and if you haven't watched Silicon Valley, you really should watch it because it's so funny. But I think this is in season 5, where they didn't, they had this Piper chat that that didn't check the ages, and he just decided to allow anybody to sign up. And Hooli, which is Gavin Belson's company, goes and buys them out in a hostile takeover. And during the research part of it, they're saying they introduce some new terms and conditions, like exactly like we're asking, which is prove how old you are. And the researcher says, Carl, you said the new Hooli chat agreement made you feel uneasy. What was it that made you feel uneasy? Well, you can see, obviously, the joke there is that Carl is quite clearly an undesirable person, and is clearly should not be in a chat room with a bunch of teenage girls, and that's the joke. But the thing is, the meaningful part of that, which has become reality, is that Hooli ends up facing billion-dollar fines, because every time one of those people logged in when they shouldn't have done, one of the young girls there logged in, it was $10,000 per login. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can see at least 7 kids there, and each one of those would be $10,000. So that's a lot of money. At the time when that was recorded, it was kind of a joke and saying, "Oh, it's going to be billions." But actually, at $7,500 in real life in California, as I said, the California penalty there is $7,500 per intentional violation. You are looking at a life-changing experience if you screw it up. So, it's really worth making sure there's not a Carl there. Or if it is, Carl is there with all the other adults. Carl's quite welcome to talk to all the adults he likes. But what you don't want is a shady-looking Carl talking to people who shouldn't be using the app. And this is an AI-generated timeline, but it works. And again, it's in the little notebook I give you later on, which is some of the key points about when these things kick in. And the slides are available later, so that you can get to have a look at it as well. And again, the AI suggests the following, which is automate security as part of the design. So embed your SBOM generation. It says into your threat modeling. Well, that's a bit fanciful. But CI/CD pipelines, well, really your build process, all the rest of it, you need to produce SBOMs, software bill of materials. And likewise, audit all cross-border data transfers, because yes, those are regulations that come in as well to do with where you're sending data. There is a kind of upper limit. So if you're below a certain threshold amount of data that you're passing around between the EU and the United States, then you're probably not liable for the regulations. But if not, then you need to restructure your cloud vendor agreements. Now, I actually know someone that did this. One of the companies I used to work for, they actually had already realized that this law was coming into place, and they now have their US data in a US hosted data center, thanks to AWS being able to do that. You can pick the region, and they pick a region so that the data is not shipped around across borders. But if you're not doing that, let's say you've picked Amazon Chicago or someone like that for your data center, and you never cared because you are in Belgium or somewhere like that, and you're like, oh, I'll just use Amazon to store my data, or DigitalOcean or something like that, and it's stored in the US. And if you've got enough data flying around, you could be in trouble. And the other one that you need to worry about, and we're going to talk about this in a second, is unifying identity architectures. What that means is that you need to have a think about how you're going to identify your users so that you are using the right APIs to determine what age your users are. You need to know how old they are, and you need to be able to prove that you took steps to do that. Because as with any law, as long as you took your best practices, and did your due diligence and you've done everything you can, if someone defrauds you, there is some defense that, you can only do so much. So if they're very good, it's like, someone using a false passport or whatever. At the end of the day, these things happen, and you don't get the border guard, and say, well, he's responsible for that person later going and having a car crash or something when they shouldn't be in the country. No, that's not how it works. If he thought the paperwork was good, and if you thought the paperwork was good, then there is some defense there. But don't rely on what I'm saying. I'm not a lawyer. And by the way, and I noticed Patrick's putting it in the chat as well, but we have talked about software bill of materials already. And if you want to know more about it, the full documentation is at cisa.gov/SBOM. But if you go to the IDE, if you open up Rad Studio, go onto the welcome page where it says Learn. There is one that says, what is SBOM and why is it so important this year? And that is with myself and Valerie Kim from Der Scanner. And we talk a bit more about SBOM and how you can produce it. And I actually show an example SBOM in that webinar as well. But we'll talk about the offer in a moment, Patrick. But yes, thank you. Patrick, who was one of our Spirit of Delphi Award winners, because he does good things like that, brings it to everyone's attention. So let's talk about some other bits and bobs. Well, the bad part is that app stores are required to implement strict age verification. And I can tell you now, both Apple and Google are taking no chances, even though several of these laws have been challenged in court and therefore on hold. And I suspect all of them will probably get challenged in court and on hold. Apple and Google are taking no chances, and they're actually have already introduced APIs that you need to stick to or use in order to verify the age of your users. And even if those laws don't finally come into effect, there are European laws to do with verifiable digital identity anyway. So I would say that you should probably be going ahead, if you haven't already, and looking at the Google Play Age Signals API, which is an API that Google's Android provides that allows you to work out how old the user is. It basically, I forget the exact implementation, but what it does is come back and tells you what range that person is in. Now, in some ways, you could say it's an invasion of privacy, because if you were a shady app developer and you wanted to target children with some special, I don't know, advertising where you want to encourage a gullible child to buy your stuff, then hey, all of a sudden you've just been given an API that tells you exactly what age they are. Not exactly, but certainly within the age range, they are under 15, for example. And that's one of the arguments against this API, but there it is. It is something that Google provides, and so do Apple. Now, talking about what those are, the ones that are available, one of them from Apple is called the Declared Age Range Framework. And this is an API that you should be calling. It gives you sort of feedback on what age the user is, and so that you can comply with these regulations about, are they a teenager, are they not, etc., etc., etc. And there is also one for Google. And as much as I dislike Grok also has got some good information about the Play Age Signals API. And here is Google's official answer about the upcoming App Store bills for users in applicable US states. So What is going to happen is if you read through this, you'll see when it becomes mandatory and when it doesn't, how it becomes mandatory, and what information you need to be gathering before you proceed and allow users to use your app. And it is pretty strict and pretty down to the bone in terms of what it is. So again, all this information, don't worry about memorizing it. It's downloadable in a repo, which I'll give you in a moment. Now, the good news is some very kind soul out there, and his name is Dave Nottage. He's a very, very good MVP, one of our best. I think he's in the chat at the moment as well. Has got a thing called Swift Bridges. And why do we need this? Well, Apple's API framework for this is quite new. And there currently is only the only framework available is in Swift, Apple's own language, which ironically is not very widely used by anybody if they're not an iOS developer for obvious reasons. But we don't have a direct translation for it at the moment in Rad Studio. Luckily, Dave and one of his users on the Delphi Worlds forum has produced some very good APIs, and Swift Bridges allows you to talk to Objective-C and Swift libraries. I'm sure Dave will correct me if I'm wrong, but it allows you to ingest the right APIs, and that's pretty good because this one from My Buzz Technologies is the declared age range API for Delphi. So this is the iOS one. I think there's an Android one on the way, but the iOS one is it explains on the repo what it is. But you do need the Swift bridges in order to do this. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, in the chat, but this came about as a result of some discussions on the Delphi World Slack group. And if you're going to do this, and I strongly suggest you do, and I also recommend, and every time I do this, Dave gets a load of people turn up, that you go and use Castry for mobile development. Okay. Now, the desktop apps are going to come along anyway, and Embarcadero are looking at how that works and exactly what form that's going to take with Windows. But it does affect iOS and it does affect Linux as well. But certainly for now, if you're going to do anything at all to do with mobile development with Delphi, then I strongly recommend that you use Castry. And when you go to that Castry repo there, so it's github.com/Delphi Worlds/Castry with a K, there's a link there. You see it in the middle of the page. It says Slack Workspace. Join that Slack group because there are a bunch of people there who are mobile developers. Not only that, it is populated by some very, very good developers in general, but it's a very welcoming place. There are some others as well. Darren Miller also does some very good community groups. I am going to have a webinar later on about community groups and talk about Darren's groups because he's got a ton of them. He's got, I think, a Telegram group. Don't know if he's got a WhatsApp group, but I don't know. He's got a lot anyway. Sorry, Darren, I should have got myself ready for that. But anyway, the MVPs are very, very good at running these communities. But I definitely recommend Delphi Worlds for anybody who's doing any form of Delphi development for mobile. C++ obviously doesn't quite apply at the moment, but even so, there's a ton of really good advice on Delphi Worlds for developers in general. So even if you're not doing mobile development, I suggest you go and look at the Castry thing. And also, when it comes to SBOMs and worrying about software composition analysis, we did a webinar before with Valerie Kim from Scanner, but Dave says he's got a demo for the Android equivalent somewhere. I just need to find it. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, well, there you go. Yes, if you're worried about producing SBOMs and software composition analysis, then go and watch our webinar. It's in the Learn section of the IDE. So open up the welcome page. If you turned it off, naughty person, turn it back on again because I put videos in there every week, 4 or 5 a week. Um, but go in there and watch the video with Valerie Kim. It's a blue one, the thumbnail. It says, "What is an S-bomb?" And Scanner do software composition analysis, which is one of the requirements for some of these laws. Now, somebody has asked about, well, hang on, if they do that, it's cloud-based. I don't want it to have cloud-based. I can't put my software up on the cloud. Dave says he's how to for Android. He's in the how to repo on GitHub and Delphi World. So there you go. So go to the Delphi World. What was I talking about? Yes. So Scanner, someone said, "Oh, well, we can't use it because it's cloud-based." They do an on-premises solution as well. So if you're an airline, for example, producing software, and you say, for legal reasons, we can't have anything in the cloud scanning our software. We want all our software in-house and scanned in-house. That's fine. Scanner do a on-prem solution as well. But the deal that we have at the moment, which if you go to embarcadero.com/rad offer, they do a we are giving away some scans for SBOM and SCA, so software composition analysis, to help you comply with some of these regulations. So go to Rad offer and do it there. But that one is for the cloud-based one. If you do find that it works for you and you actually, you say, well, we really want it on-prem and want it unlimited and want this and this and this, then talk to us or talk to Scanner, and they'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. They do unlimited scans. They do price scans where you pay per scan and things like that as well. But great stuff. And Dave, I'll put that link up in a moment on your stuff. And by the way, when we were talking about the breach, when we talked about Notepad++, where it was hacked, unfortunately, by nasty people, URL there is tinyurl.com/UE secure, but Ultra Edit has got SCA and SBOM already done. So if you want to use a notepad editor style thing where you've got some guaranteed security and you're in a secure environment where you need to prove that the tools you're using have got secure composition analysis and all the rest of it, then Ultra Edit, it's cheap. It's not free, but it does everything you could ever want, and it open big files instantly. I mean, open a 1 gigabyte file and it'll open in a few seconds, and then you can search it and it'll search instantly. I love it. I think it's a great product. That's why I talk about it a lot. It is a fair play. It is an Idera company as well, and I do some DevRel for Ultra Edit from time to time, but very secure, provably secure. All the bits that are going into that. They have at least 2 web pages talking all about the how it's secure and why it's secure and what goes into it. But try it out and see what you think. And finally, 2 other links as well coming up. One of them is my Notebook LM notebook, which allowed me to do all the research here about these topics. And this has been quite a long webinar. I know my machine crashed because PowerPoint killed it, but there's quite a lot of information anyway, and way too much that we want to sit down and talk about it. So I've created a Notebook LM. If you go to tinyurl.com/IanB, that's my name, IanB Security Notebook, you go in there. I've shared it for you so you can have a look at it yourself. If you're a Notebook LM user, then it should be very easy to understand. They have a free tier as well. I pay for mine. I've got the pro version, but the free tier allows you to view this notebook, and also some slides, and I think flashcards and a few other things all I've created there. And I will add more to it as I go along, but it's all completely free for you. Get it from there. And likewise, all the slides and copies of my downloads and the slides that you've just seen now are at tinyurl.com/IanB Sec Resources. It's a bit of a handful, but I was running out of short names I could put in, but E&B Sec Resources, Security Resources, and everything that you've seen here uh, is on there. So all the slides and everything as well. So you can recap it. And of course, you can always go back and watch this again. So that's it. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Boom. Hang on. Uh, well, it would be too easy to say stop sharing my screen. There you go. I can do that. Turn my camera back on. Here I am. Aha! Not crashed. So let me just put the thing up. The GitHub repo is up there. If you scan that, you go directly to the GitHub repo. Everything you've seen, including the links and the slides and everything else, are there, ready to download, good to go. And in case you can't scan the QR code, you can also go down here as well, tinyurl.com/ENB resources. Go to there and you've got everything that you can want in there. Now, some of the things that came up in the chat whilst I was talking, which is the iOS and the Android declared age range thing. If you go to Delphi Worlds and then the demos for Castry in there, actually just go to Castry and then demos, declared age range folder, it's in there. And you see all sorts of things in there. There is some discussion about linking the two together, etc., etc. I have a demo for Android. Yes, exactly. I've already mentioned that. That's good. Anyway, there's the resources. Now, I know this was kind of like fairly long webinar and a lot of blocks of text on the slides, but there are something like 30 regulations coming to fruition this year. I've only really talked about the ones that seem to be really quite pertinent to what we do as people here. I've just realized that something happened when I crashed as well, and that's gone great. I don't want you to think I'm just trying to scare you into going for the scanner or something like that. What I want you to do is to understand that the reason I shared the research is so that you can see what I saw and understand what things apply to you. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this on LinkedIn, if you click on the subscribe button, that would be really helpful. We won't know who you are. I've said this before. I won't get your email or your bank details or anything like that. What will happen is the next time I go live, or if this crashes again and it goes live again, then you'll get a notification from YouTube, from Google themselves to say, hey, Embarcadero have gone live, and that way you then get to not miss anything. I don't care about the likes. It's nice if you like it, but it also helps other people, because if you subscribe, then other people that look like you to them, because they know everything about you, your shoe size, how often you eat bran, whether you eat enough fruit, they know everything. Other people that look similar to you, who are Delphi people, who maybe don't know about what we do, perhaps they're slogging away in some far off country and they don't speak English as well, so they never get any emails about us or anything like that. Other people that seem to be similar to you will get told about what we do with the YouTube videos. Now, we do push all of these videos down into the learn page on the ID as well, on the welcome page. But it would be helpful. Just click on subscribe. That would be great. I don't get paid any extra, and I don't get paid any less if you don't do it. but it will help other people. If you're a Delphi fan, and I suspect if you're watching this, you probably are. We need to encourage as many people as possible to know about the product, to know about Delphi, to know about C++ builder, to know about Rad Studio and Interbase. And the best way of doing that is word of mouth, because I can get our marketing people to put together the glossiest brochures on the planet. At the end of the day, the best way that people can decide whether Delphi, which is a very solid, reliable programming language that visually develops apps in that length of time, you won't hear the click, but does it quickly. The best way of people, I think, knowing for themselves is to use the product, use Delphi, try and create an app. It's easy. It's easy, and we're getting more and more AI tools. There are lots of open, source domain, public domain AI tools. David Millington's got one, and a few other people as well are coming up. And almost every couple of days now, I get another new AI project that I get told about. If you go into Get It, we put a lot of them in there as well. If you go into Tools, Get It, Package Manager, you'll see, I'm just typing AI, you'll see a whole bunch of AI helpers. We do embrace AI, and I think 2026 is going to be the year of AI for people. So, what I've noticed is that you still need to understand how to code right now. Now, maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, AI will get to the point where we do absolutely trust it, and it will do everything. It's already almost there. You can actually do quite a few projects and just let the AI do it. But I know just as many people have done that, and it's nearly got there, but there's some problem that they need to tweak. In order to tweak it, you've got to understand coding, and Delphi is an easy language to learn. It's if you're going to have a problem with a piece of code, better something you can look at and go, oh, I understand where it's gone wrong, than something complex, like a very complicated C++ or Rust statement or something like that. C++ is a very powerful programming language, very close to metal. If you want pure speed, then C++ is the thing for you. If you want to squeeze every single ounce you can out of your CPU, out of your computer, then C++ has got absolutely nothing beats it, for sure. C++ build, particularly C++ Builder 13, is world class. It's as good as anything else out there, for sure. The LLVM compiler that's there, Clang 20, CLang 20, it's great. But Delphi is a lot easier to understand, I think. And I want to design a screen. Click, 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 drop, drop, drop. Off you go. Same with C++. Click, 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 drop, drop, drop. C++ builder, both of them. Visual development. Hit build. Hit run. Off you go. You've created an app. It couldn't be easier. Get the AI to do that for you as well. Yes, absolutely. Something's wrong, dive in. You can understand what's happening. Screen layout not quite right, drag it around, move it around. You can keep telling the AI to iterate over it. Sooner or later, you'll run out of tokens. But it's still, I believe, genuinely believe, that Delphi is the easiest way to create robust, stable applications, genuinely cross-platform, from mostly single code base, that I know. And I know a lot. I can program in like at least 9 programming languages, if not more. I don't keep count, but a lot. I've been a software developer for 42 years, I think, maybe longer. And I've done everything. C. I've written antivirus software in C. I've done C++, Forth, Python, COBOL for many years. I still think Delphi's the best. I love it. Anyway, that's it, I think. Let me just check the chat. I'm sorry about the crash at the beginning. I don't know what happened. PowerPoint just slaughtered my machine and completely hanged. Lots of people saying, not a chance. I trust AI code, not for a while. Not a chance. I trust AI code, not for a while. Yes. Well, actually, some people are the exact opposite. Some people, I know of one friend of mine who's a very, very good MVP and developer, and in fact, several of them have shown me this. But one guy in particular, I know, for example, Um, he does he's all in for AI now, and he is working on a commercial product that he sells and is very rich from, by the way. and and he now uses AI as his junior coder, and he spends a lot of money on it. But the money that he spends on is cheaper than his time. He was telling me recently he did feature in 2 weeks, I think it was, and he had budgeted 5 months manual work for that, and he had it done start to finish, working with lots of tests and everything in 2 weeks, under 2 weeks, I think he said. So you know, he's a guy I respect. He's a good friend. So if he can say that's, and if it was no good, he would tell me. I trust him to be straight with me. He's not the only one. There's a couple of others as well said similar things as well. Yes, AI is not going away. You've got to embrace it, because it is it's important as the internet, probably more important, I think, for the future of what's going to happen to society. Good thing or bad thing, I don't know. You could argue that social media has been a bad thing, but is it? Like, I can talk to my sister who lives 4,500 miles away and find out what she's doing, catch up with her and all the rest of it. I could do that on the phone. With a smartphone, I can FaceTime her, but I can also see on social media. I have friends that I've never ever met who was as good a friend as anybody I've met in person as well, due to the internet. So, and I work remotely. This is my place. This is where I live. This is actually genuinely my office in my apartment. And yeah, there's this cool stuff is really cool. The nerdy stuff. But I think that to deny AI and say I'm never going to use it, I get it. And several people like Patrick saying, I love coding too much to use AI. Yeah, of course, a 40-year career, of course I love coding, and I still get up every day and write code. Mostly nowadays it's demonstration code, but I remember the day I wanted to become a coder. I've said this before, and I never ever have regretted that choice. Never. And 40 years on, I still, love it. And if I ever stop doing the job I'm doing now, I will carry on coding. I hope I don't stop doing the job I'm doing now. I like it, and everybody seems to be okay with it. But it's so good. Gaz says, great presentation, very informative, eye-opening. Thanks for putting the research time in and sharing it with us all. Yes, yeah, all the research is on that repo there. Oh, one day I'll get the pointing right. It's on that repo. Scan it, go to it, and slides are there and everything else. And I'll make sure. I am going to follow this up with a blog post as well, which will also have the links in. AI is wrong name, and it's AE, artificial experience. Yes, actually. And funnily enough, someone mentioned the other day, is there ever going to be an artificial E in AI? Oh, very good. Funnily enough, in most other countries, it's IA, intelligentsia artificial, or however you want to say it, artificial. I don't know. But AI or IA, wherever you see IA, it's the same thing. And Patrick says, I love coding too much. Yeah. And Einstein says, yeah, me too. I think the same. Yeah, of course. Well, we're all fans of coding. We'll be here, will we? I think that's true. But anyway, it's good stuff. I've rambled enough. Like I say, sorry about the crash at the beginning. Computers. I am going to get a new computer at some point. But I will be back again, not next week, but the week after, with 2 webinars. One on the Tuesday with Marco G from GK, everybody's favorite tech partner and MVP. And on the Thursday, I believe it is. Yes, Thursday, we're doing the Rad Studio 13.1. Where's my camera gone? 13.1 sneak peek. We get to see what's coming next. If you're not on the beta program, exciting things are in the works. We shall see. Oh, and someone saying my pronunciation was good. Oh, thank you. Oh, you're flattering me. Don't think it was that good, but it was all right. It was okay. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody, and I will see you next time. Have fun and get to that repo and Yeah, take a look for yourself and frighten yourself to death, but take steps to adhere to it because it's not going away. The world is concerned about you know, making sure making sure that the right people see the right information and that children are not exposed to things that they shouldn't be accidentally or deliberately. And we can't really argue against that, can we? All right. Speak to you soon. Have fun. Bye bye.